Welcome to a production, a collaboration to show you the realities of today and perhaps some hopes for tomorrow. This is The Diary of an Angry Black Man, a compilation of docudrama and potential for tomorrow. The issue of today is not just the brutality of the locals or states or nationwide. Understand that the slavery and brutality that was practiced on the least of these is just practice for the whole world. And that if we do not rise to the level of our best nobility, then we will not be able to prepare our next generation for a better world, but a more tragic one. So we look through the annals of history and the books and the speakers of our time to ask the difficult questions of our day, to seek the positive provision of tomorrow. And this is The Diary of an Angry Black Man, the chronicles of that search. Please call 5 people and let them know the good programming is on. This is the rough director's cut, but we have the good for you.
Everybody tells you integration and civil rights cannot help black folk. Get that through your heads. Get it through your heads this morning so you'll never get it in there again. Integration and civil rights cannot help black folk. You have been so psychologically, emotionally, economically, and politically, educationally damaged by 600 years of slavery and Jim Crow segregation that integration can't even touch you. Yeah. And that's why you're not advancing. And this morning we're going to start out talking about what the real problem is. And the real problem is that that two things in this society. It is the legacies of slavery that have not been eradicated, and the second thing is that you don't want to be black. And that's what we're going to be getting into this morning. I'm going to show you how your keys to getting out of this problem is by being black. And I'm going to show you how all these various groups around the society have been teaching you how to leave the only key you got lying on the floor. And that's why you're not getting out of anything. You've been taught and socially conditioned to keep reaching for diversity, multicultural, minorities, poor folk, people of color, everything but blackness. And you cannot get out of it.
Now, we'll look at Jim Brown, and Jim Brown will talk about the systematic
scandal that starts with the police, the criminal police. But then, if you would realize that everybody is saying that it is a police problem, it is not just a policeman problem, because every policeman that does something on the street and he's going to prosecute you, he takes his evidence to a prosecutor. And when he takes that evidence to a prosecutor, that prosecutor shapes that evidence. And even if the policeman had a policeman with him that said it didn't happen that way, that prosecutor puts him to the side. Because all he wants to do is to convict you. The investigations that they run are not to find out the facts. It is to back up a criminal policeman charges so that when they go in court, they can get a conviction.
Day after day after day. And judges will tell you privately, I know there's a lot of lying and a lot of prevaricating. If they don't stand up, I'll say, from my own heart, they are complicit in this.
Yes, sir.
And what I was trying to get them to do was respond to that. Now, very interesting. I ended that little talk and I started to take questions from the audience. The first question came from a black judge. She raised her hand. She says, I want an answer to your question. She said, I want the people in this room, my colleagues, I want to know how many of them see it and know that it goes on. I want a show of hands. And she got 2/3 of the hands.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, what else is sending an innocent man to prison, if not kidnapping? Hold on. Forcible confinement, torture, and in the case of capital punishment, conspiracy to commit murder. That's what sending an innocent person to prison is all about. I guarantee you that if judges, if police officers, if prosecutors were all held accountable for their actions, the rate of wrongful convictions would go way down.
Reuben Hurricane Carter talking about the rate of wrongful convictions. And we also had David Harris talking about judicial impropriety, knowing that lying is going on. Here's David Andrew Hacker.
All right, I now have to say this carefully, because I'm going to get to this. The building of prisons and longer sentences is one way in which this country has been solving its race problem. Yes. If you hear that things are safer and so on, but notice, this is a solution. By the way, it's not a cheap solution. Oh, another figure. It costs $22,146 a year per inmate. Over 22,000 inmate. Now, that could send you to Oberlin College. Sure. You know, and that's what. And the reason is that you have a prison staff, guards and support staff, of 16,000. In other words, one salary person for every 3 inmates. This is even better ratio than teaching here. Prisons have also become an important industry in small communities throughout the state. You have prisons now in, they give you a map on the internet telling you where they are. This is something ominous. Is this America? Is this something, Well, anyway, we have prisons in, you tell me where they are, Lima, Grafton, Mansfield, Maryville, Lebanon, Nelsonville, Colville. And who are in these prisons? Guys from Cleveland and Cincinnati, miles from home. How can their families visit them? And the guards are all white, aren't they? I would suspect so in Marysville or Nelsonville or whatever. Well, at all events, in the prison population, last census, in the state of Ohio, the black population is 11.5% of the population. 11.5% in Ohio. In prisons, 52% black, over half. Tremendous disproportion. Now, by the way, white people don't say this, but I doubt if there are many black families in Ohio that do not have one relative who's not behind bars. Somewhere. Cousin, nephew, whatever. How many white people can say that? And not only are there 45,000 people in prison, but when you add in jails, probation, and parole, it gets up to 192,000. This is huge. And again, when you figure half of them are African origin, this is one way of, well, as I say, it's a solution. And I know this sounds ominous, grim, but it is. And by the way, do you hear many people who complain about taxes complaining about the prison tax that they pay? Not that many. So you are going to be in an unlit parking lot, and as you're going to your car, somebody springs out, holds a weapon, like a knife, at you, and takes your money. That's going to happen tonight. Well, student isn't happy, but I say, but you have a choice. You have a choice. You can either be robbed in that unlit parking lot by a white robber and lose, because you have it with you, $100, or you can be robbed by a black robber with a knife and lose what you have, which is $20. Which will you take? The white robber losing 100, or the black 20? Well, you know what the student's going to say. I'll take the white robber anytime. They both have knives. They're both rather rough-looking guys. Why? Now we get to it. And again, notice what I'm doing. This is, I'm with white people all the time, so I know how we think and act. The reason why we choose the white robber is that we're afraid that the black guy, after he takes our $20, or whatever he had, will then proceed to do something else to pay back what our people have done to his people. That's our fear. And that's our fear. It's that we know, by the way, that what he's doing, we deserve that. We know we've done those things. And we're not just talking about slavery years ago. And that's what our fear is. So, in this sense, we have black crime and
Andrew Hacker talks about that. And we look at the without sanctuary and the atrocities as we've dealt with.
What is it that's causing this? Is it a conspiracy? Is it just black men, for the most part, succumbing to the pressures of society and opting out to a subculture of crime and self-destruction. Some folks say it's a conspiracy. Some of our more militant brothers, they'll point to America's early history and say that America has a history of using black folks and black men in particular for free or cheap labor. That's true. They'll say that at the invention of the cotton gin, slavery was no longer necessary, and technology, the cotton gin, no longer necessitated slaves, so that game ran out. So then came the Industrial Revolution, put the unskilled labor in the factories, work long hours for small dollars. Then came the technological revolution, and that played out. No more unskilled labor needed. So they say then they had to find out what to do with all these black folks on their hands, who they hadn't trained, who they hadn't educated, who in fact they had made it illegal to educate a little over 150 years ago. That's what some of our militant friends are saying. Y'all ain't hear this from me. I want to stay on television, so y'all, this ain't me talking. This is what my militant friends are telling me. And they say that once technology outgrew the need for unskilled labor, they say then they removed the jobs from the inner cities and replaced it with guns and drugs for them to kill themselves with. And those who were left standing, they put them in prison and then privatized it so they can make money again off of it. That's what they're saying, y'all. I don't want no parts of the white man's system. That's the white man's system. Don't bring me that. You a lie. This ain't the white man's system. This is all our system. This is all our system. That's a sellout. Our forefathers worked 300 years for free to make this the richest country in the world. And I'll be damned if we should pass it along and stay in the neighborhood, locked on the corner, talking about this is somebody else's system. This land is our land, and this country is our country, and we better get off the corner, and we better start handling our business and fight back and get what we deserve.
Make sure two things. First of all, you got to understand the nature of the problem in this city and across this country. And contrary to what anybody tells you, black folk are not progressing in America. You're going backwards. In proportional terms, you're exactly where you were 140 years ago. And what you're doing right now is enjoying the fruits of a social illusion that gives you the impression that somehow you're advancing because you can socialize with people. Because you can go sit in other people's schools and go to other people's hotels and go to other people's restaurants and go to other people's communities and go to other people's businesses. That is not progress, that's an illusion.
In other words, Jim Crow Sr. is dead, but Jim Crow Jr. is alive and well.
We live in a Jim Crow society, and many times we are told, black people are told to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. And Time Warner's broken rules, and they give you specific, they're putting me in rules that they came up, it's illegal rules. But it's like pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. So we're gonna have a demonstration today, and we're gonna see if you can actually pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Your instructions are to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. You can only pull. You can only get up by pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps. Go ahead. You have 30 seconds. Pull yourself up. Pull yourself up. Come on, man. Put something into it. Oh, you're violating the law. You're violating the law. Pull yourself up, sir. Sir, can you pull yourself up? Sir, you got about 2 seconds. You gotta pull yourself up.
I can't!
Are you telling me you cannot pull yourself up by your own bootstraps?
I can't!
Ladies and gentlemen, the fact of the matter is, we all need somebody to lean on. You've heard the song. And without someone to lean on and to push up, you can't get off. You can't. You can't push up. Pulling yourself up by your own bootstrap is a fantasy that causes you to try to futility. The reality is America owes the African American man. The reality is Akron owes the African American man. The reality is that the African nation, that Akron owes the whole African continent, because if it wasn't for the black labor whose sweat died and was mistreated to bring you rubber and to then port it over to Akron and then have black men, mainly black men, in sweatshops getting all kind of, what do they call it? What? Lip light, all kind of incarcerants in your system. Understand that Goodyear Tire and Rubber exploited Africa. Understand that. Then they brought it here. And then they built up a whole industry where roads was developed starting here in Akron. But let's not ever forget that there is a price to pay. That if you see people who are doing what they're supposed to do, we cannot economically isolate them, but we must bring them into inclusion. And that is what this is about. You cannot expect me to pull myself up from my own bootstraps. It's not possible. Each one needs one. We all need someone to get along. And that's why this is about. Because we are saying the reality is, and the truth is, they're trying to, what do they call it? What do they call it? Quarantine. An economic quarantine of Anthony Hudson. And we need to break that quarantine. You need to break that quarantine. You need to break it.
Thought Sambo would die a timely death, but no, someone gave him life and wealth. Willie Lynch, he wanted you to go insane. And here's the game. He said, take away all the things that would impress their identity, all the things that would genetically prove that they've got more on it than you, and by the time we get to the end, it will be time very well spent, because if you can keep them all on the dizzy, you will hear them call each other bitties, bitsons and hoes and things of that sort. So here's the thing you must exhort. You must always distrust on self, and that wealth is never a part of the scheme, just the chase of an impossible dream. Make the dream the scheme, and you shall have a nigga for sure in less than a half.
When are you going to get so outraged? Thousands of black men and women that's police. Why do you think you can't turn on the news or TV and see a white family complaining that a black cop shot their loved one in the back because they thought the cell phone was a gun? You think it's because black cops is more spiritual? You think it's because they're better trained? Black cops got enough sense to know white folks ain't gonna tolerate it. And one day when we stop tolerating, I'm not talking about go get no gun. I'm talking about one day when we stop tolerating, it'll stop. And you got to also understand, in America, we live in a neighborhood, not a community. A community is you control your schools, huh? You control your cops, huh? You control the economics.
So the unique situation for many black Americans is that we have the criminal element that has been recycled into prisons. You'll have that coupled with police who in some cases engage in brutal behavior. So the distinction in many black communities is that we have to run from the cops and the robbers. It's a bad thing that if somebody is robbing your house, you don't know whether to call the police or not. But that sounds like an extreme statement. Well, let me run you back. New York, Brooklyn, if you please. I live in Brooklyn, born and raised there. I live in the 70th precinct. Why is the 70th precinct known to New Yorkers? 70th precinct is where a young man was taken from in front of a nightclub, had an argument with a policeman. He took him not to a wooded, secluded area, not to the backwoods, but took him to the police station house. Took him in the bathroom, made him pull his pants down, stuck a plunger up his rectum, almost killed him. 200 policemen in the precinct, not one of them stopped the cop, reported the cop, arrested the cop, or voluntarily testified against the cop. Name is Abner Louino. When we fought the case, got federal charges on the police, went to trial for over a year and a half. They said that the young man got the injuries in a homosexual relationship. They said that Sharpton's out there perpetrating a hoax until the cop himself came in court and admitted he did it. Now, I live in that precinct. I could have called that policeman to my house, take care of my family. So people will discuss, why do I march? Why do I do what I do? It is easy, if you do not live under circumstances like that, to intellectualize how you will fight social policy. But when you live under circumstances as brutal as that, however you react is not the issue. It is what you are reacting to that becomes the issue. Imagine people more concerned about how people protest murder than they are the murders. We led a movement around Amadou Diallo, young man shot at 41 times, unarmed, going in his own vestry of his own house in New York. We started marches and demanding justice. The press wanted to know why we were marching rather than why you shoot an unarmed man 41 times. Not just New York. Taisha Miller in California. Cases all over the United States. Oh, y'all are anti-police. No, we're anti-police brutality. Those that are anti-police are those that put on the uniform and disgrace it by coming to criminals themselves.
The Supreme Court, in some of their decisions, have stated that civil rights is not an appropriate venue for the courts. What's your response to that?
I disagree vigorously with that. In fact, I think about the fact that one of my role models growing up, and probably my primary role model, was Thurgood Marshall. And when I was in high school, the case of Brown versus the Board of Education came out. Traditionally, for African Americans and other dispossessed Americans, the courts have been the last hope. And very often, if you can't turn to the courts for hope, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. And I certainly hope that the justices will remember that as they look back at decisions like Brown versus the Board of Education and all those other great decisions that have interpreted the Constitution and restored the rights of those who had them taken away, and certainly affirm the rights of those who never had them. I think that's really important.
One of your colleagues, I think his name is Brian Stevenson, who handles death row cases.
Yes.
He was recently quoted.
I'm curious, have you ever suggested a divorce? We have a situation in America where America has refused to even go to the hearings on race, have a people that they've subjected from the beginning. And we've read some of the rules like the social contract, which says if you don't do right by us, we're not obligated to your law. And some of us are seeking a divorce from America. Legitimate, split it in half like a woman and a man. And we're looking for a council of judges. Would you consider sitting on that panel?
I have no legal training. My own suggestion that I have made is that, first of all, there ought to be a consideration given to a setting up in this country of something akin to a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Because I have, in my travels here, found that there is a pain in the pit of the tummies of many, if not all, African Americans, Native Americans, which needs to be articulated. And if you have a safe space, such as would be provided by a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, you might go a long way to beginning to deal with the legacy of slavery and your civil war in this country, which is a great country. I mean, it's a country with considerable, I mean, the people here are very, very generous people, and we've benefited from that generosity. But we think, I mean, that until you take very seriously what has happened in your history here, that you'll constantly, I think, keep being surprised at racial outbursts, which sometimes seem to be provoked by something quite insignificant in a way. Something that is, in a way, unthreatening. People should be able to have their say of all races and just unburden themselves. Because we found that just telling your story was an incredibly therapeutic thing for many people.
Forgive me for a follow-up. But the U.S. have said, we're not interested. They said that to the whole world, sir, by not going to the hearings on races. So that would be fine if you had a benevolent person. Even a benevolent rapist would come to the meeting. But America showed itself as a maligned rapist. They're not interested in coming to discuss race.
Well, yeah, I still would think that you don't want to give up yet. Don't give up yet, and try to be persuasive.
Follow up on the personal aspect. If, say, for example, with Archbishop TuTu saying truth and reconciliation is enough to atone for the murders and the deaths, would you, who have personally endured with that victimization, would that seem to be enough for you to know who all conspired in?
Honestly? Honestly? I think I'd have to say no to that. Let me give you an example. For 30-some years, I worked almost alone to see that Medgar's killer was brought to justice. Close friends, acquaintances, and others described me as being, their description of me was less than friendly, okay? That I would never let go. I was living in the past, even though I was moving on with my life in many, many different directions. I wanted to see Medgar's killer convicted. I knew he had been caught. There were two hung juries, as you probably know. And all of these years passed without anything else being done. Granted, I did make a nuisance of myself. I did not have money to pay an investigator. Every time I would go back to Mississippi, which was 2 or 3 times a year, I'd make my way to the Delta, other places, and ask people what's happened, where is this man? Fortunately, he continued to do things and he kept himself in the news quite a bit. But it just so happened that in my being persistent with that, a young reporter from the Clarion Ledger was given documentation which at that time was not legal to for release. But he called me and he said, I have something. Are you still interested in reopening this case? And I said, yes. Said, I can't tell you where the information has come from, but if you want it, it's yours. From that, we got the trial.
This is pictures of brutality that I have
That's
suffered
how I got your
and a
number.
witness.
They beat that man bad. They, he was saying something out of his cell, and then they opened up his cell. A bunch of them went in. They started kicking him. He fell out of the cell. He was laying in the pod area, like it's a circle, like go around the main where the sheriffs be at. They were stomping him, macing him, punching him. He was bleeding out the side of his face, and they just kept on stomping him. Kept on. Then handcuffed him. They beat him up real bad.
Do you remember what was it in the morning? Or rough idea
It
what
was
time?
around, I'd say about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Because he was bailed out. All he was waiting on was to get out.
Now, this was on Saturday, correct?
Yeah.
He was bailed out on Friday.
Well, he had already been bailed out. He was just waiting to leave. He was still there Saturday morning.
I know.
Sitting
Bail
down
was
in the
paid
holding
at 2
area.
o'clock Friday.
What?
Bail was paid at 2 o'clock
He
Friday.
wanted to know how come he wasn't out yet.
Okay.
It was about 8 of them. They beat that man like he had slapped one of them, like he tried to jump him.
Well, that's what they claim he did.
He didn't do shit.
The documents I have say he jumped him.
No, oh my God, when they opened up that cell door, they went in kicking his ass. His, me and one guy was in this cell right here. He was in this cell right here. We could see everything.
Okay.
When they opened up that door, they went in swinging.
Okay.
He fell out, and when I went, even if he did jump on one of them, when he landed on the floor, why is it taking 8 to stomp him and punch him and spray him with mace? He already on the floor. That's bullshit. They lying. There wasn't one black officer there either. Not one.
Okay. That's what he told me.
And they was bragging about it, laughing about it. Then they put him back in the cell, made him stand there another hour and a half, 2 hours before they even took him to the hospital. They lying. They lying. They know they lying.
It was about 4 o'clock. According to the documents I have, it was around 4 o'clock when they took him to the hospital.
About 4:30. But hell, that's still an hour and a half, 2 hours later. And this man bleeding. You know he bleeding. They cleaned his cell before they took him to the hospital.
Who cleaned the cell?
They had some trustees come in and clean it and bleach it and spray it down with disinfectant and everything.
Where was he at that time?
They had moved him to another cell. Then they put him back in that cell.
Okay.
Then they came and took him to the hospital in shackles.
Okay.
Because when he walked by me, he looked up at me and the guy that was in there and winked at me. Like, yeah, y'all know what happened. He asked me, he's like, what was y'all trying to do? Spray me in my ass with mace? Why y'all have to do this to me like this? But as far as him fighting back, wasn't no fight, man. They stomped that dude. They stomped him. Kicked him, punched him, stomped him, maced him. You name it, they did it. Well, they did everything but kill him.
When he called me, he told me they tried to kill him.
You think they was the way they was beating on him? If that would have been 8 black officers on one white man, them 8 officers would be under investigation right now, if not fired. They beat the dog shit out of that man, and was a captain or something in there because he had them little gold bars on his shirt. I'm surprised he was able to walk. Period.
No, they've beat you. You don't know that they've beat him several more times since you saw him.
Well, I just know about that one time that I seen, And if they did it anywhere near like they did it the first time, shit, they trying to kill him. Your body can't take them kind of beatings over and over.
While they were beating him?
No, they was laughing. Laughing, just stomping the shit out of him.
Were there other people besides you that could see this?
Yeah.
We are outraged that in city after city in America, we can call a roll of young, unarmed black men who have been hurt or killed by out-of-control rogue police. From New York City to Los Angeles, Benton Harbor, Michigan, Louisville, Kentucky, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Pittsburgh, and the list goes on. Black people are calling the roll. And we join you here today because we're sick and tired of calling the roll. We're outraged that police who harm or kill our sons seem to do so with impunity and so seldom are brought to justice that they are left free to inflict pain on others. And we are outraged that justice for black people caught in the grips of an oppressive police state too often is justice is a fleeting thing in America. We are outraged to have had to call for a boycott of this city in order to force change on our city and state leaders. And we are outraged at the insensitivity and unresponsiveness of some of the elected officials and some of Cincinnati's corporate leaders. We are extremely outraged that those who have demonstrated the most insensitivity would try to use some black faces to sow disunity in the community. But we are not so outraged that we fail to remember. We remember that in 1862, a decree from the Cincinnati mayor unleashed a torrent of police brutality upon Cincinnati's black citizens that required the intervention of President Abraham Lincoln himself to stop. We remember that even Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had to fight for silence or even outright complicity of segments of the clergy, high society, and of even other black people. He told us that nothing in the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. We remember,
as I said when I last spoke to Dr. King, he looked troubled and I said, "What's the matter, Martin?" He said, "Harry, we've come a long way. Voting rights, civil rights, integration." He says, "and I'm sure we're going to have all of that. But I've come to a place that disturbs me deeply." And I said, "and what is in that place?" He said, "What is in that place is the realization." He said, "What's in that place is that I am afraid we are integrating into a burning house."
Oh, wonderful. I know that's right.
I will praise you, Lord, with my whole heart. I will praise you, Lord, with all that I've got. I give my all. I will worship thee in spirit and truth. Lord, I yield my life. It's the least I can do when I view the cross where you died for me. When I view the cross where all men can be free by your deed, then I praise you, Lord, for how you've rescued me. Lord, I yield my life. Lord, I yield my life. Lord, I yield my life. can do. It's the least I can do for you. I will praise you, Lord, with my whole heart. I will praise you, Lord, with all that I've got. I give my all. I will worship thee in spirit and truth. Lord, I yield my life. It's the least I can do. When I view the cross where you died for me, when I view the cross where all men can be free by your deed, then I praise you, Lord, for how you've rescued me. Lord, I yield my life. Lord, I yield my life. Lord, I yield my life. It's the least I can do. It's the least I can do for you.
I know we said that thou shalt not kill, but if you can kill that Sambo within my people, I think it's God's will.
So I believe in me. I believe that I was able to overcome millions of resistances. In fact, my very existence was a consequence of my being able to overcome the oppositional forces. When my father emitted his spermatozoa into my mother's uterus, therefore there were 6 million possibilities that could have been Naim Akbar. 6 million little flagellating sperm moving into the new universe of possibility, looking for the egg to be able to communicate with. As soon as 1 million of them hit this new environment, they got wiped out because they couldn't take the pressure of an environment that was so toxic and so testing and so challenging. And the woman's uterus, my mother's uterus, wasn't able to somehow even contain or be compassionate. She had to challenge the sperm cell at the beginning. So 6 million come out and 1 million get wiped out right away. Then the other 5 million start swimming upstream, and they start swimming trying to find the egg as best they can do, because they understand this is a race. This is a race for survival. There's 6 million of us here, and only one of us can become Naim Akbar. Which one is going to be Naim Akbar? Because we're looking for the egg. We have to look for the place, the goal, the objective, where we need to get to. And then as they begin to go up, like millions begin to fall to the sides, thousands begin to die out. They can't take the pressure. They can't take the stress. They can't take the hardship. They can't survive the opposition that's in that environment. Then they begin to spot the egg all in the distance. They begin to say, we almost there, we almost to the victory. By now you're down to only a couple of hundred there, and a couple of hundred begin to head for the sperm, begin to head for the egg. The egg somehow is simply there, looking so inviting, looking so enticing, just waiting to be penetrated by just what it needs to be able to be transformed and transmutated and made into that neophyte that is going to become this whole thing that becomes Naim Akbar. It wants to be a zygote ready to grow, and the universal purposes has already been maintained because we've already wiped out nearly 5 million possibilities already, and all that's left now is 100 strongest possibilities out of the whole race, and those who are winning the marathon are moving towards the goal, coming towards the objective, and they're about to hit the egg, they're coming into the egg, and then 10 of them hit the egg and they get knocked out, they can't get through, their heads are not strong enough to be able to penetrate the egg, and then 10 more to try to get in, and they begin to give off the type of chemical processes that need to be able to go through the shell of the egg. But the shell of the egg is very discerning and very discriminating, and the shell of the egg ain't gonna let no any old mess through. So Lord, all those things hitting on, only one can be able to get through, and once that one gets through, the wall is closed and nobody else can get in. and all the other possibilities fall to the side. And guess who that one was? That was Naim Akbar. So out of 5,999,000 possibilities, I am the 1 out of 6 million who made it. So you want to know, can I do what I need to do? You damn right. You can't stop me nowhere.
How about your own niche in the stratosphere of talent, in the universe of possibility? You're going to come to a sense of who you are. That God has given to you is a unique stamp on time, an eternal imprint on space. And so you got to come into a sense of who you are. You got to become all that you are meant to be. Don't let the army co-opt and absorb that, be all that you can be. God has intended for you and I to live up to the stature of the individuality that God has given to us, not in imitation of somebody else, not trying to be somebody else, but be trying to be the best you that you can be. Now, why is that important? Because you, the individual, are the first and only example and copy of God's ideal for your existence on earth. Ain't nobody else like you. Some people might celebrate that, but we want to acclaim that. Ain't nobody else who you are. And if nobody else is you, you've got to live up to the specificity and particularity of the individuality that God gave you. And if you refuse to do that, we're going to miss something in existence. And the tragedy may be that we don't even know what we're missing because you've refused to acknowledge the central flow of eternal spirit through your individual space. We don't even know what we're missing on because you refuse to do it. So when you mess up you ain't just messing up you messing up the universe. I'm free. I don't have to define myself according to the litmus test of an alternative vision of possibility for my infinite reach as a human being, embodying the infinite potential of God. I am what I am. And I've been working on this for a minute. This is a lifelong project. I'm still in process. I got new possibilities locked up inside of me. Every day I'm reaching for something deeper, something wider, something more possible than what I've already been revealed to myself. I am a mystery to me. Because when you surrender yourself totally and completely to a power that is higher than you, to a possibility that is deeper than you, then God owns you in a way that you ain't even knowing yourself. You ever done something and said, I didn't even know I had that in me. I didn't know I could say something like that. I didn't know I could feel like that. Because if you have, in the words of Thurman, yielded the nerve center of your consent to God, yield the nerve center of your consent to God, then you are a beachhead for infinite possibility. You are a local site of the eternal. What that means then is that your agenda is deeper than what a country can dictate, what a community can expect, and what an individual can demand. You are a project of infinite evolution and eternal expansion focused on space and time. So don't get twisted by what you see. I'm bigger than what I appear to be.
Yes, we realize you as an interviewer who has imposed many questions upon leaders and advocates of our time.
Yes, sir.
But, and you asked them these questions concerning the Negro or the Negroids.
Okay.
And let me ask you a question, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
What would you do if you were king of the black man?
If I were king of the black man, Well, if I were king of the black man, I would require all of us to search diligently to look inside of ourselves and self-improve and self-repair, to discover who we are, to discover where we've come from, to discover what it has taken for us to become just a sperm cell to the people that we are today.
Why, is that all you do?
No. I would also require all black men on earth to cease all hostilities, and especially black on black hostilities, but cessation of all hostilities for 30 days as a payment of atonement, so that we would reflect as to what is good for us and what is not. Then the third thing I would do, I would test the black religious clergy. And the test would simply be to announce the day of Jubilee, where all debts are forgiven and all captives go free. And if the religious leaders would not subscribe to it, we would not subscribe to those leaders. We've spent thousands and thousands of years. The Christian dogma suggests that the Day of Jubilee occur every 50 years. We have not had one in over 5,000. That this year would be the acceptable year of Jubilee. Fourthly, I would make sure that we received a land grant so that we could reintegrate, because we have integrated to the point of disintegrating the ability to control our own. We've gone from integration to disintegration. We would therefore need a place to call our own, a land grant, where we are the majority population. And then we would provide provisions. Fifthly, I would create a new currency, Imani currency, based on the working faith of a people. If we can build up the United States for 300 years for free, certainly we can repair ourselves and build a new Mecca, a new Jerusalem, a new America, a new world. As the black king, that's what I would do. And the sixth thing I would do is to promote a replacement for the king. And this king replacement could not sell their people out. The main criteria for the new king would be that they love my people as much or more than I. That's what I would do as the king of the black man.
Well, that sounds like an agenda. Yes, and finally, do you have any conclusion to this?
You know, a lot has been said about the black man, that we were 3/5 of a human. And the 2/5 that we're missing is our authority and knowledge of self. Many people have said that I was insane, grandiose, and crazy. But I say to you, if I'm crazy, say I'm crazy for my people. If I'm crazy, say that I'm crazy to consider that this world could be made better by the least of these. If I'm crazy, come up with a better plan. And if I'm crazy, you should be just as crazy. Thank you for the interview.
You're quite welcome.
They said all the prophets were crazy too, remember? They said all the prophets of God were crazy, brother. So
what you call the findings were that I was not guilty by reason of insanity, that there was a temporary insanity at the time, and that the court, Ben Parath, then suggested that we go go to a commitment hearing. Now, a commitment hearing is a hearing that determines whether or not you're going to be put in an insane hospital, a mentally ill hospital, and forced drugs.
Okay, now the thing is, the state of Ohio can only confine you 6 months, but the judge wanted to give you 2 years in that environment, correct?
Yes, with the competency hearing, the Ohio Revised Code said 6 months, but the judge ruled that it was 2 years, and then the Twin Valley then contacted them and said, no, Your Honor, it's 6 months, and then the judge did a year instead of 6 months. But I was released in less than 2 months because I passed the competency test.
And you know, as our viewers have seen before, you know, you're very intelligent, you're very listening to what you're explaining and that, you're not angry. So if anybody can pass this type of a test, you're a prime candidate for that.
Well, one of the issues that I'd like to raise is the Sheriff's Department said that on the April 2nd incident when I was beaten in the head and all of that, the sheriff said that I wandered off from the hospital, but we have discharge papers that indicates that I was discharged, and the discharge papers also indicate that when a person has received serious head trauma, they get dizzy, they get confused, their speech may be slurred, they may be getting angry. And so these are common traits of someone who's been beaten and battered.
Exactly right.
But the psychological report wanted to say that it was delusion, that I didn't suffer what I suffered.
Now, from my understanding, that April 2nd visit to the hospital was never billed or recorded. Is that correct? You only got a bill for the April 6th visit, correct?
I'm not really sure about that, but I did write a letter to the hospital and state to them that why I should not be billed. I did do that.
Exactly right. You know, this is a real good cover-up they have going here when they can abuse you the way they did. And it doesn't occur on paper anywhere. There's no paper trail, you know?
And understand that the judge said in her order that I stipulated to the report. Stipulated means agreed to. I never agreed to the report. I never agreed. The only thing I agreed to is that I was competent to stand trial. They were making allegations that I was incoherent and couldn't talk. The next hearing is February 1st at 10:30. You might want to get there early because they're changing the times around so that the public misses the event or misses the hearing. And I personally invite you as just a human to come and stand by and just watch the high-tech lynching attempt.
A visual outside the Summit County Jail because your human rights were being denied. And press releases went out, a bunch of people showed up.
Pray for justice
unbeknownst
and
to
mercy,
us earlier in the day. You were transferred out of the county jail.
To Twin Valley, and when I got to Twin Valley, I was able to make a phone call, and I called Rose and spoke to Rose and a number of other people who were at the vigil at the time.
I was actually getting in the car, getting ready to leave to go to the vigil when you called me. I had you on the cell phone, so I just kept right on talking to you, drove to the rally, and we conducted about a 2-hour interview. You talked to almost all the people that were in attendance at the vigil.
Right.
And that was probably, that was right around 4 o'clock, maybe a few hours after you got to the hospital.
And it should be noted that before they said I was incompetent to stand trial, I was trying to change attorneys because of Walter Madison, I believed, went against me. He acted like a prosecutor, and that's a danger.
He's an adversarial